I don't remember the last thing I saw before the darkness came. Only the sound of my mother crying in the hallway, and a doctor's voice muffled behind the door. I was 14. The world faded into a dull, heavy silence after that, as if someone had pulled a velvet curtain across my life and locked the windows shut. It wasn't dramatic, not the way people expect. No car accident. No tragic fall. Just a slow, quiet shutting down of the optic nerves. The doctors said it was genetic. Rare. Progressive. Final. By the time I was 20, I had memorized every corner of my apartment. The sound the floor made by the kitchen sink. The sharp breath of wind that slipped through the cracked window above my bed. I had turned my world into rhythm, touch, and memory. And I was okay with it. Or at least, I told myself I was. Then Michael arrived. He wasn't a miracle. He didn't burst into my life like a savior. He just showed up at the community center where I volunteered on weekends, reading books to children who were too young to notice I never looked them in the eye. He had one of those voices that felt like home even when he said something as mundane as, "Is this seat taken?" It started with coffee, then longer walks, then weekends. Then one night, he reached for my hand while crossing a busy street, and I didn't pull away. That night, I let him stay. He never treated me like I was broken. Not even once. And that, more than anything, made me feel seen. It had been nearly 3 years when he brought up the word treatment. He said it like it was nothing, like it was a passing thought between dinner and dessert. "There's a clinic overseas, Lenora," he said, twirling his spoon. "They're trialing something new. Something promising." I didn't respond right away. I had buried the idea of seeing again so deep inside me, it had become like a dream I no longer allowed myself to visit. But he kept going. "I've already spoken to them. I sent your case. They're optimistic." I remember laughing. Not out of joy. Out of fear. "Michael, do you know how many false hopes I've had? Do you know what it feels like to pray for a miracle and wake up to the same dark?" He paused, and for the first time in months, I felt him hesitate. "This is different," he said, softer this time. "And if I'm wrong, I'll be wrong beside you." That's what convinced me. The trip was fast. Quiet. He didn't tell anyone, not even my parents. He said he wanted this moment to belong to just us. He was with me when they wheeled me into pre-op. He kissed my forehead and said, "When you wake up, I'll be the first thing you see." That's what he said. But when I woke up, he wasn't there. Just the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor, and the gentle hum of machines around me. My eyes were still bandaged. The air smelled like antiseptic and fresh linen. A nurse came in, didn't say much. Said he'd stepped out. Said he'd be back soon. But he didn't come back that day. Or the next. On the 3rd day, I asked the nurse, "Has Michael been by?" Her silence lingered too long. Then, too quickly, she said, "He left a note. I believe he'll be in touch soon." But there was no note. Not for me. I felt something fracture then. Not in my body, but in the space where my trust lived. I lay there, sightless still, wondering what he wasn't telling me. What he had done. Why the man who once swore he'd be the first thing I saw, was suddenly nowhere to be found. And somewhere in that hollow silence, a quiet terror began to bloom. Because deep down, I felt it. Michael hadn't left because something went wrong. He'd left because something had worked. But at what cost? I was still blind. That was my first thought when I woke up on the 4th morning. The bandages were off. The world around me was light. Not quite shapes. Not quite color. But brightness, shifting, flickering, like shadows moving behind frosted glass. I blinked, and for the first time in 17 years, something blinked back. I sat up, heart pounding. The nurse, Elena, must have noticed, because she came rushing in with a calm but practiced smile. "Lenora," she said gently, "how are you feeling?" I couldn't even answer her. My voice caught in my throat. I think I can see light." She nodded, like she already knew. "It's starting. Your brain is beginning to recognize the signals. It'll come slowly, but it's working." I covered my mouth with my hands. I didn't cry. I just sat there, trembling, stunned by the idea that something I had buried so long ago was clawing its way back into my life. Michael. Where was he? Why wasn't he here for this? I turned toward her voice. Has he called? Michael? He wasn't there when I woke up. I thought maybe. She hesitated, just like before. That tight, trained expression returned to her face. I'll check, she said quietly. I'll ask the front desk again. But she didn't come back for hours. And when she did, her voice was different, more formal, more distant. There was a call, but no message. He might be traveling back to the States. Might be. The next day, my vision sharpened. I could see outlines, walls, the edge of the window. My own hands, though they trembled, unfamiliar to my eyes. Still no sign of him. They moved me to a small recovery suite down the hall. Everything was pristine white, like walking through a cloud. I passed by reflective surfaces and saw, for the first time, something that barely resembled the girl I remembered. Longer hair, paler skin, eyes sunken with years of imagining rather than seeing. I stood in the mirror, staring at myself. I was looking. Actually looking. And I hated that he wasn't there to see it with me. The next morning, I heard them. 2 nurses whispering just outside my door. I hadn't told them I was awake. I lay still, quiet, eyes closed. She doesn't know yet? One asked. A pause. Then, no. And I don't think she should hear it like this. I still can't believe he went through with it. I mean. The other cut her off. Shoo. Keep your voice down. Silence. My heart stopped. What had he gone through with? I sat up, eyes wide now, vision still cloudy but sharper. I swung my legs over the bed and tried to calm my breath. My fingers gripped the sheets tightly. They were talking about Michael. I was sure of it. What hadn't I been told? The doctor came later that day. He was kind, mid-40s, with an accent I couldn't quite place. He smiled warmly at my progress. You're responding better than expected, Lenora, he said. Your optic nerves are regenerating faster than we predicted. The procedure was successful. I stared at him. What procedure? A brief flicker of discomfort crossed his face. He cleared his throat. We explained this before, but maybe it was during your sedation. You received a very specific type of neural transplant. A donation-based experimental graft. A donation? I asked, my voice barely audible. He nodded. Anonymous donor. The tissue used to help restore your nerve pathways had to come from someone biologically compatible. I swallowed hard. My skin felt cold. And who was the donor? He looked at me carefully. I'm afraid that information is sealed. Sealed. Like a secret. Like a sacrifice. That night, I dreamed of Michael's voice. He was calling my name, but I couldn't see him. Just his voice, echoing down a long white hallway, getting quieter each time I tried to follow it. When I woke, I felt it in my bones. Michael hadn't just left. He had given something. Something real. Something irreversible. And I was going to find out what it was. The next morning, I walked without the cane. Not because I didn't need it, but because I had to feel the floor myself. I had to be sure I wasn't dreaming. Every step from my bed to the hallway felt like crossing a line between the world I'd lived in and the one I never thought I'd touch again. And yet, every step was tainted by one question. What did Michael give up so I could see again? The nurses still avoided my eyes. They smiled, polite, mechanical, cold. There was a quiet tension every time I asked about him. Some said he'd gone home. Others said he left instructions. But no one ever said where. No one ever said why. That afternoon, I found Nurse Elena in the break room. She was alone, hunched over a thermos, eyes tired. She didn't see me at first. And when she did, she startled. Lenora, how did you find this floor? I followed the light, I said flatly. Her eyes widened. She smiled nervously. That's wonderful. I sat down across from her and leaned forward. I need you to stop lying to me. Her face paled. Elena, you know where he is, don't you? She looked around, as if someone might be listening. For a moment, she seemed to weigh something in her mind, something heavy, something dangerous. Then she whispered, "He didn't leave." "Not exactly." My heart skipped. "Then where is he?" She hesitated. "There's a long-term recovery wing. On the lower floors. Restricted access. He's not well." I stood up so fast my chair scraped the tile. "What do you mean not well?" She grabbed my arm. "Wait, Lenora, please. You don't understand. The procedure, they told you about the graft, right?" I nodded, barely breathing. She swallowed. "It wasn't just any donor. It wasn't from some anonymous match. Michael. He was the donor." My knees buckled. I sat back down. "No. That's not possible." Elena's voice cracked. "He didn't tell you because he knew you'd never agree. He fought the ethics board. He signed the waiver. He volunteered." I stared at her, dizzy. "But how? You said it was neural tissue, optic nerves. You can't just take that from a living." Her silence answered me. I whispered, "He's blind now, isn't he?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "He didn't lose everything. But, yes. Partial vision loss. Severe neurological complications. He's recovering, but he won't be the same." My chest collapsed in on itself. He gave up his sight, so I could have mine. And he didn't even tell me. I didn't wait for permission. I forced my way to the lower wing that night, past security, down cold white corridors that hummed with machines and quiet footsteps. They tried to stop me. I didn't care. Room 304. The door was slightly open. I stood there, breathless. Inside, a figure sat near the window, facing the light, eyes barely focused, hand resting on the arm of the chair. The shape of his shoulders, the tilt of his head, I knew it like I knew my own heartbeat. I stepped in. "Michael." He turned slightly, slowly. He blinked. But not toward me. Not at me. Just into the white blur of the room. He couldn't see me. Not anymore. Now, the only question left was, why didn't he tell me? Why vanish? Why hide? Why let me wake up alone when he was just a floor below, blind for me? The answers had to come from him. And I wasn't leaving until they did. He turned his head at the sound of my voice, but his eyes didn't land on me. They hovered just above my shoulder, unfocused, empty, lost in the way I used to be. "Lenora." His voice cracked like a window under pressure. "I didn't want you to see me like this." I stepped closer. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the unbearable weight of knowing I could see him, and he no longer could see me back. "You gave me your sight," I said, barely breathing. He smiled, a small broken thing. "No. I gave you the chance to live a life I could never give you. That's not the same." Tears stung my eyes. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you make me think you left?" He sighed, leaning back against the window frame. Light streamed across his face, pale and soft. "Because I knew you'd come back for me. You'd stay. You'd trade everything you just got, just to sit in the dark again." I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came. "You were meant to move forward, Lenora. To finally see the world. I didn't want to be the thing that held you in place." "You weren't," I said sharply. "You never were. You were the only thing that ever made me want to go anywhere." He turned away slightly. I could see the effort it took. Even holding up his own weight seemed like a battle now. "You should go," he whispered. "They say I'll improve, but it's slow. Maybe not full recovery. Maybe never. You don't owe me anything." I knelt beside his chair and took his hand. He tried to pull away, but I didn't let go. "I owe you everything," I said. "And that's exactly why I'm not leaving." Over the next 2 weeks, I stayed. I read to him like he once read to me. I described the trees, the sky, the faces of people passing by outside his window. He told me stories from his childhood, things he'd never shared before. Sometimes he cried without realizing it. Sometimes I did. His vision didn't return. Not in the way mine had, but slowly, he learned to navigate the world he'd given up for me. He could walk again without holding onto the walls. He could feel the sun on his face and know where the light was coming from. And I never stopped reminding him what he looked like. I described him down to every freckle, every line around his eyes, the slight dimple in his left cheek that only showed when he was being sarcastic. 6 months later, we returned home. To our home. The apartment I used to memorize in steps and sounds now unfolded before me in light and form. I could see the yellow couch he had always described as unreasonably cheerful. I could see the plant that never grew right, the coffee stains on the table, the old photograph of us by the bookshelf, one I had never really seen before. He couldn't see any of it now. But he saw me. He felt every moment I sat beside him. He knew, without needing proof, that I hadn't walked away. On the night of our 1-year anniversary, 1 year since the surgery, since the secret, since the silence, I lit candles across the apartment and played the song he once danced me through the living room to. He sat on the couch, listening, smiling. And then I knelt down in front of him and placed a small velvet box in his hands. He paused. "What's this?" "I told you I owe you everything," I whispered. "So let's call this interest." He opened it slowly. Inside, a small, engraved ring. On the inside it read, "Your light gave me mine." We married the next spring. He walked down the aisle with me, cane in hand, tears in his eyes he didn't try to hide. And as I stood across from him, able to see the man I loved, his softness, his strength, the quiet bravery that saved me, I knew one thing for sure. I hadn't seen him too late. I had seen him just in time.